The year is 1492. Yet, beneath the varnish of this long-accepted narrative, a jagged crack has appeared. We find ourselves standing on the precipice of a historical paradigm shift. With its faded ink depicting a sprawling island west of Greenland, it promised to be the smoking gun of Norse exploration. However, as with all things shrouded in the mists of antiquity, the truth is rarely simple. But look past the parchment. The real story isn't written on a map, it is carved into the earth itself. In the remote, windswept reaches of Newfoundland, the fog lifts to reveal the sod-walled foundations of LAnse, Meadows. This is not a legend. It is the undeniable footprint of Norse expansion, a site where iron was forged and timber was hewn by hands that knew the fjords of Scandinavia long before they knew the forests of the West. If the Viking arrival predates the Columbian epoch by 500 years, then our entire understanding of the Age of Discovery is a carefully curated illusion. As we strip away the layers of tradition, we uncover a reality far more visceral, far more dangerous, and infinitely more compelling. They crossed the North Atlantic in open longships, navigating by the stars and the flight of birds, driven by a hunger for land that pushed the boundaries of the known world. The old maps are burning, the artifacts are being re-examined, and the silence of the North Atlantic is finally being broken. Prepare yourself. We are not just tracing a route. We are reclaiming a lost chapter of the human odyssey. The year is 985. For the Norse, the sea is not a barrier, but a highway carved from brine and salt-crusted ambition. They are masters of the clinker-built longship, a vessel of terrifying grace, its flexible oak planks stitched together with iron rivets, designed to flex against the violent tantrums of the ocean rather than shatter under the strain. Having already tamed the volcanic crags of Iceland, the Norse gaze fixed further west. They sought space, resources, and the relentless pull of the unknown. It was a brutal, unforgiving sanctuary where life clung to the fjords by a thread of hearth fire and sheer defiance. Here, the landscape was a monochrome masterpiece of jagged ice and biting wind, yet for the settlers, it was home, a precarious outpost on the edge of the known world. They built longhouses of turf and stone, insulating their existence against winters that could freeze a man's breath in his chest. They navigated by the flight of ravens and the shifting stars, reading the language of the waves with an intuition that bordered on sorcery. It was a staging ground, a lonely sentinel standing watch over the vast, unmapped dark of the western seas. From the high cliffs of the Greenland settlements, the wind carried whispers of something else, stories of strange driftwood, of currents that pulled toward distant, temperate shores, and of a horizon that promised more than just ice. They were a people of expansion, driven by a restless hunger to see what lay beyond the veil of fog. As they tightened their rigging and sharpened their axes, the scent of pine and loam began to drift across the brine, haunting their dreams. The next horizon was calling, and for the bold, the call was impossible to ignore. Out there, in the mist, a continent waited in silence. The mist parts, not for a god or a ghost, but for the biting edge of an iron blade. 5 centuries before Columbus dared the Atlantic, the Northmen did not merely drift, they arrived with intent. For decades, this was dismissed as the fevered dream of sagas, tales of Vinland whispered by firelight. Then, in 1960, the soil surrendered its secret. These were not the flimsy shacks of castaways. These were longhouses, built with the architectural DNA of Iceland and Greenland, designed to withstand the brutal assault of a subarctic winter. Excavations revealed a small, iron-smelting furnace, a technological marvel of the 11th century. Within its hearth lay slag, the charred residue of iron production, and a rusted, single-headed rivet, undoubtedly pried from the hull of a seaworthy gnar. Further evidence surfaced in the form of a bronze cloak pin, its intricate craftsmanship screaming of Scandinavian origin. Nearby, a spindle whorl, a tool for spinning wool, suggested that women were present, transforming this outpost from a transient camp into a literal hearth of colonization. The site layout speaks of a calculated logistical hub. There was a carpenter's workshop, littered with wood shavings that have endured the passage of a millennium, and a boat repair area positioned strategically near the water's edge. They did not conquer this land. They engaged in a desperate, fleeting dialogue with it. The Norsemen had mapped the edge of the world, leaving behind a jagged, iron-wrought signature that defied the maps of their time. But as the hearths grew cold, a haunting question lingered in the salty air. Why abandon such a prize? The answer lies not in a lack of courage, but in the brutal arithmetic of survival. Vinland was a bridge too far. The dream of a permanent colony withered under the weight of isolation. They were a tiny, fragmented cluster of souls clinging to the edge of a continent they did not understand, surrounded by a wilderness that held no mercy. What began as awkward trade quickly curdled into skirmishes. The Vikings, masters of the shield wall in the fjords of Europe, found themselves outmatched by the tactical fluidity and intimate knowledge of the terrain possessed by the First Nations. Exhausted, outnumbered, and severed from the veins of their homeland, the settlement at LAnse Meadows was dismantled. For centuries, this chapter of human history was dismissed as the fever dream of poets. Yet, beneath the peat and the shifting sands of Newfoundland, the iron rivets and the spindle whorls remain. When we look at the globe today, it is easy to view history as a straight line of inevitable expansion. But the Norse experience serves as a humbling reminder. History is often a series of near misses. They touched a future that wasn't ready for them, and they retreated into the shadows of myth. If a handful of wanderers could traverse the abyss of the Atlantic a millennium ago, what other echoes of humanity are still waiting to be unearthed beneath the soil we walk upon today? The Earth holds more secrets than we have the courage to ask for. We are only just beginning to dig.